Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to share this incredible story with you all today. So have you ever felt like you stumbled onto a glitch in the Matrix? You know, a place that, according to all the official records, simply does not exist, and yet, there it is, right in front of your own two eyes? Well, today we're actually exploring a literal glitch in the Matrix of Montreal. We're going to dive into Patrick Waddington's absolutely fascinating short story, The Street That Got Mislaid. It's just a brilliant tale about a street that completely vanished from the city's maps and the one guy who discovers its incredible secret. Let's get right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a city clerk's discovery, then move on to finding Green Bottle Street. After that, we'll uncover the secret community, examine Mark's ultimate decision, and finally wrap things up by looking at the themes of the story.
All right, part 1. A city clerk's discovery. Let's look at the incredible discovery that sets this whole adventure into motion. So meet our protagonist, Mark Girondin. He works in the filing section of the Montreal City Hall's engineering department. And he has been there for so long that the entire city is basically laid out in his brain like a master map. He knows every single winding lane and hidden corner. But his actual, physical, day-to-day life? Honestly, it's pretty miserable. He lives in this cramped room on Oven Street where his neighbors are incredibly noisy, sometimes even violent, and his landlady is just constantly unpleasant. It's so bad that Mark actually prefers the quiet of his office to his own home. He essentially uses his brilliant mind as an escape, just mentally walking the quiet, perfectly mapped out streets of his imagination. Before we go any further, let's do a quick vocabulary check with our first key phrase, blind alleys. Basically, these are streets which are open at one end but closed at the other. You know, dead ends. Now, why does this matter? Well, because Mark's mental map is so absolute that he knows every single one of Montreal's blind alleys by heart. If a street exists in Montreal, Mark knows it. Period. Which is exactly why what happens next completely blows his mind.
One hot August afternoon, Mark opens up a filing cabinet drawer all the way to the back and feels something caught. He pulls it out, and it's this old index card. It's dirty, it's torn, but it's perfectly legible, and written right on it is a name, Green Bottle Street. Mark is absolutely stunned. I mean, with his encyclopedic knowledge of the city, he has never, ever heard of this place. It's not in the master file. It's literally nowhere. So how does an entire street just vanish?
Well, it turns out it was the perfect bureaucratic storm. Let's trace the timeline of how a whole neighborhood gets erased from a major city. According to Mark's digging, the last regular street inspection was exactly 15 years, 5 months, and 14 days ago. Sometime after that, his department actually moved to a new floor. The old-fashioned files were tossed out and new cards were made. It must have been during this chaotic move that the card for Green Bottle Street slipped out and got stuck behind a drawer. And without that card, no inspectors ever went there, no tax collectors went there, the street just dropped off the radar of City Hall entirely.
And this brings us to a really crucial vocabulary word for this story, mislaid. It means to put something in a place that is later forgotten. Notice the huge difference between destroyed and mislaid. Green Bottle Street wasn't demolished by bulldozers, right? It wasn't paved over. It was just forgotten. A simple clerical error literally caused an entire neighborhood to slip right through the cracks of reality.
Moving right along to part 2, finding Green Bottle Street.
So what do you do when you find a map to a place that shouldn't exist? Well, you go looking for it, obviously. Mark makes up his mind, fakes being sick to take the afternoon off, and relies on that infallible mental map of his to guide him. He goes to the exact geographic coordinates where this street should be, and at first, he's totally baffled. He actually walks right past the location twice. He has to stop, close his eyes, and just trust his internal geography. Finally, he walks directly towards where the entry should be, finding it between adjoining walls so narrow he can touch them with his outstretched hands. And right there, hiding in plain sight, is a tall, solid wooden structure with a simple latch door. He opens it up and literally steps into another world.
Which perfectly tees up our next vocabulary word, cobbled. It simply means paved with stones. Stepping through that wooden door and onto a cobbled street instantly transports Mark and us as the audience straight back in time. It's this immediate signal that he has left the modern, noisy, paved, chaotic city of Montreal behind and entered a little pocket of history that's been perfectly preserved.
The street itself is literally shaped like a bottle. There are just 3 small houses on either side, so 6 in total, and each one has this neat little garden. It is completely charming, delightfully old-fashioned, and just exudes this profound sense of well-being and peace.
I mean, it is the exact opposite of Mark's noisy, violent life back on Owen Street. Here, he meets a woman around 60 years old, Miss Trisdale, who is just peacefully watering her roses. When Mark takes off his hat and officially announces he's from the city engineering department, she doesn't panic. She simply sets down her watering can and says, "So you've found us out at last."
This takes us to part 3, the secret community.
So the big question is, how have they survived all this time? Miss Truesdale sits Mark down and tells him the absolute wildest story. It all started with our next vocabulary phrase, a gesture of goodwill. This just means an act of kindness and generosity towards others. So, years ago, the landlord who owned all the houses on Greenbottle Street and actually lived in one of them himself loved his tenants so much that when he died, in a massive gesture of goodwill, he left them his property in his will. They owned their homes outright. Let's break down exactly how they pulled off this ultimate disappearing act. First, as we just learned, they own the property thanks to that generous landlord. Second, because of that lost index card Mark found, the tax notices just mysteriously stopped coming in the mail. They realized the city had completely forgotten about them. So, a clever neighbor named Michael Flanagan proposed an idea. Look, if a miracle happens, you ate it. They built that solid wooden door at the entrance to keep out random passersby. They stopped getting mail delivered directly and instead quietly collected at the post office. They literally only leave to buy food and clothes. And the coolest part? When original residents pass away, they carefully select new people to move in, like a nice refugee named Mr. Plonsky or a distant relative, people who understand the situation and desperately need a sanctuary. They have basically built an off-the-grid utopia right in the middle of a major, bustling city.
All right, part 4, Mark's ultimate decision.
As Mark is standing there in this beautiful, peaceful garden, listening to Miss Truesdale talk about their piano concerts and travel stories, it hits him. He realizes he holds their entire fate in his hands. To really understand his choice here, we need our next vocabulary word, belligerent. It means ready to fight, unpleasant, and aggressive. You see, as Miss Truesdale speaks, Mark can't help but think about his own life. He thinks about his quarrelsome landlady and his totally belligerent neighbors back on Owen Street. He is surrounded by conflict, noise, and aggression every single day.
You really have to look at the stark contrast between his two options here. On one side, you have Mark's reality, noise, violence, belligerence, and constant stress. On the other side, Greenbottle Street, pure peace, neatness, charm, and welcoming artistic neighbors. For a quiet guy like Mark, this is literally a choice between heaven and hell.
But here is the massive catch. Miss Truesdale is smiling pleasantly at him, right? But she has completely forgotten one vital fact. Mark still has that torn index card sitting right in his pocket. The story beautifully describes that card as being like a live grenade. Because if Mark goes back to City Hall and files that card properly like he's supposed to, the explosion is going to be immediate. There would be a massive scandal. Newspaper reporters would swarm those charming little gardens. Tax collectors would show up demanding 15 years of back taxes, which would almost certainly force everyone out of their homes. Mark could literally blow their little world to pieces with one tiny piece of paper.
Then Miss Truesdale looks at Mark and casually says, "I'm sure it would suit you. You could have the top floor of my house. You must come and see it right away." Mark considers this. He considers his awful, loud life back at Owen Street. And then he acts. Let's look at our final vocabulary phrase, with a gesture of finality. This means acting in a manner that shows a firm, absolute, irreversible decision. I am just going to read this straight from the text because it's so good. The mind of Mark Girondin, filing clerk, was made up. With a gesture of finality, he tore the card across and dropped the pieces in the watering can. As far as he was concerned, Greenbottle Street could remain mislaid forever. Wow, Mark actively chooses to destroy the official government record. He commits a literal bureaucratic crime just to protect a human miracle. He chooses community, peace, and belonging over his boring, lonely reality. Our guy is moving in.
Which brings us to part 5, themes of the story.
So, what is Patrick Waddington really trying to tell us here? I think the absolute brilliance of The Street That Got Mislaid is that it taps into these deeply universal feelings. First, there's that intense desire to escape a noisy, stressful life. Honestly, who hasn't felt completely overwhelmed by the modern world and just wished for a hidden door to a quieter place? Second, it highlights the deep human need for peace and belonging. The residents of Greenbottle Street aren't just hiding away from the world, they're actively supporting each other. Third, it's about finding your own safe community. They invite refugees and kind people to join them. And finally, the immense weight of moral choices. Mark definitely had a duty to his job at City Hall, sure, but he had a much higher moral duty to protect innocent people's happiness. Sometimes, doing the right thing officially is actually the entirely wrong thing morally.
And that brings me to my final question for you today. I want you to really put yourself in Mark Geronen's shoes for a second. You find a secret, peaceful utopia that is dodging taxes and hiding from the modern world. Would you have torn up the card and moved in like Mark did? Or would you have reported Green Bottle Street to City Hall because, at the end of the day, rules are rules? It is a really tough choice, isn't it? Think about what you value most, order and rules, or peace and sanctuary. Thank you all so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope you enjoyed uncovering the mystery of the street that got mislaid as much as I did. Keep learning and keep wondering.